Movie Fanatic Nate coming at you to review the sequel. Well, it's a sequel and basically a prequel. Well, I guess it's both a sequel and a prequel to the Amityville horror by the name of Amityville 2, The Possession. I think that's the name of it, right? Yeah, Amityville 2, The Possession. And this is the Shout Factory Blu-ray that's basically featured in their Amityville horror trilogy. But this is the Shout Factory Blu-ray trilogy, Amityville horror trilogy, and this is their Blu-ray that goes along with that. I think it's the only way you can have Amityville 2 and 3 on Blu-ray is by getting this trilogy, but don't quote me. So basically this is a story about the whatever the hell it's called. They don't even say, you know, it was based on a true story about this kid that supposedly, you know, blew his family away or whatever. But basically, from what I can understand, this movie is basically a story about how the kid at the beginning of the first movie who blew his family away was driven to that. And when I was I probably saw this, in my previous review of Amityville Horror, I mentioned that I saw Amityville Horror when I was 14 for the first time. And I imagine I saw this the same year, summer of 1991. I'm pretty sure I saw this at the same time. As a matter of fact, I can remember actually, I think, liking this movie more as a teenager, as a 14-year-old, than the original movie. And I think, I'm rewatching these movies to review them. And I think the reason is really easy to see why is because the movie doesn't set, the movie's shorter. I think it's like, I don't know. Yeah, it's shorter than the first movie, I think. And also, because it's kind of a two-part movie in a way, where you have a first part and then a second part. So therefore, it doesn't spend so much time lollygagging around at the first, the first half, or the first part of the first half of the movie, the first hour or whatever. As this first movie does. Of course, I don't regard what the first movie does, or the lollygagging, if you will, as being anything bad. It just is a slow burn. It's kind of the way to tell that story, in my opinion, is just to do the slow burn of things getting, more frustrating or more creepy as time goes on. This movie has kind of a two-part movie in the sense that, for the first part of the movie basically shows the family showing up and things that go bad with that, and then the kid has to, the kid not has to, but then the kid kills the family, and then the second part of the movie is the aftermath. So that's the reason why this movie kind of doesn't waste, in my opinion, probably doesn't waste so much time lollygagging at the beginning. So when I first saw this when I was 14, I probably thought that, the stuff of the first movie happened, and then since this is a part 2, I didn't know at 14, or didn't even know for probably quite a while, that this was, I always thought that this was another family that moved into the house after the events of the first movie. I didn't necessarily know for a while that this was actually kind of a prequel, and these events are basically what happened before the first movie. But it doesn't really, I guess, matter all that much. So I just figured I'd mention that when I first saw it as a 14-year-old, I was like, oh, okay, the Lutzes get scared out of the house, and now these guys are moving in, and this is what happens, or whatever. No, it's reversed, where this is what happened first, and then the first movie happens after this. So in a way, it was kind of a, before its time, prequel, doing a kind of a prequel, before its time thing, because that wasn't incredibly common back in those days, I don't think, to have prequels happening. Usually if there's a sequel, it's events that happen after the events of the first movie. So this movie, as I was saying, I think the reason why I liked it should be said that I don't like this better than the first movie anymore. I think the first movie is the best Amityville horror movie. But I can clearly see why I like this better as a 14-year-old, because it just really doesn't waste any time. It shows the family getting there. And also another reason why I like this one probably more is because of the teenage daughter at the time, who was 20 when they were filming this, so I can say this without being a pervert. I appreciated her, not necessarily the small little bit of nudity, because the nudity that, it's not exactly sexy, because it's what's going on during that scene is just nasty incest stuff. So it's not like I liked her for that scene. It was just like, just in general, she is a cute girl in this movie. So basically this movie is very much with like the original movie. It just shows a family moving into the house. Of course, this is, like I say, it's a prequel to the first movie, so this is happening basically first. And you know, obviously having seen the first movie, it's very, you know, treading very familiar ground here, where this family with the probably the more abusive father. I mean, it's kind of whatever, just Italian old-fashioned abusive father. At least he's not really up, you know, really up on or into the religion aspect, which I'll give him props for. But it's basically the guy from Rocky. You know, I can't remember what his name was in Rocky, but the same guy is basically plays the dad in this movie. And you've got Sonny, the older brother, and then you've got the older sister, who's the one who's kind of pretty cute in this movie, and then the younger sister and younger brother in this movie. So it's basically a story very much, I mean, it's similar to the first movie, obviously, where the family moves in and shit starts going bad. What ends up happening is, and the reason I thought this was a sequel to this first movie is because, I mean, they arrive there and the frickin' windows are nailed shut. So it just seems so much like a, you know, happening after the first movie, but whatever. So they arrive to the house, and what this movie is basically a story about Sonny, the older brother, slowly becoming kind of possessed by a force in the movie. And another reason why I like this movie more as a 14-year-old in the first movie is that it's much more stylistic, and I really went in for that stuff as a teenager, like stylistic camera and stuff like that. And it should be said that this, I don't think the first movie was, but the second and third movie were clearly I can't say his last name, Dilo De Laurentiis, or whatever the hell that producer's name is, Productions. So, you know, the director that, you know, the director of the second movie was Italian, so it really has this kind of really cool Italian, really more avant-garde aspect to the movie, where the first one, as far in terms of the way it was shot and cut and stuff, was kind of straightforward, whereas this movie, one of the reasons why I like this more at 14 than the first one is that just kind of that Sam Raimi-ish, you know, POV of the bad spirits or the entity or whatever, and even when Sonny was basically being possessed, just doing all this weird stuff, where very much like with Evil Dead would do something. Oh, was it Evil Dead or the second one? I don't know. One of them did the same kind of thing, where it was like went over his head and came around. But this one, they actually have the technology to come over his head, turn around, and Sonny's upside down, and then it, you know, turns right side up and stuff. So the scene where, with all of the kind of POV, you know, POV aspect of the bad evil spirits or whatever, was really kind of cool. And the guy who did the music for the first movie came back to score this, which was really cool as well, very much with like kind of John Williams and Jaws 1 and 2. So that really kind of, you know, gave it the feeling of the first movie a lot too, and I'm pretty sure he continues on with some of the same themes and stuff. So that's one thing that I think is still really kind of cool about this movie is instead of just you're not experiencing the movie necessarily from the point of view of the family this time. It's you actually get POV stuff from the demons or the demented or the you know the spooky evil spiritual entities in the house and stuff, and you almost get like almost their point of view of possessing Sonny in a way. So, you know, that's why I like this more as a kid than I did, or than I do now, because it really just from the very beginning, it doesn't waste time and really gets going and really gets off to a, you know, pretty quick pace from the get-go. Yeah, I wrote down here that basically the first hour and 7 minutes are my favorite part of the movie. It's basically just shows, you know, Sonny's, I can't remember, I can't remember, gee, I just watched it. I can't remember if other things, yeah, I guess other things went wrong. Oh yeah, with the kids. The house is trying to like make the kids look bad because the house will paint stuff in remember that scene where you know, the house, it's kind of like, I don't know if Poltergeist had come out yet or not, but it's very Poltergeist-ish stuff that happens in this movie where the paintbrushes will just come alive and paint all this stuff, this creepy monster on the wall, the two younger kids' room, and it's like "Dishonor Thy Father," and the music that went along with that when the dad came in and saw that, like, "O completion it's just like really freaking funny. I don't know if that's, you know, some kind of language or Italian or whatever, but when they when they zoom in on that as an adult watching that, it's like, when you're a teenager it's like, oh my god, this shit got real. But when you're an adult and you see them zoom in on that painting and that serious music, it's just like, oh my god. Apparently the Italian director of this movie was really heavily into this. He really wanted to interject all this kind of, you know, Catholicism and all this bullshit, of course, which would be, you know, I guess, you know, not out of place for a movie like this. But I think he wanted to, it's said that he wanted to really do more than I think that is in the final movie, with all this kind of, you know, good versus evil bullshit and all this kind of stuff. So I'm glad that someone pulled back the reins and presumably didn't let him go full bore with, you know, his personal interests of exploring all that kind of crap and the actual, you know, supposed real world or real life way to, you know, I think he wanted to get this kind of reality, if you will, of what, you know, what's really said and done when you try to, you know, bless a house or exercise a house or exercise a person and all this bullshit. So for me, the you know, my favorite part of the movie is the first basically hour and 7 minutes, is just basically seeing the family react to the house and all the, you know, the family pains or whatever that goes along with being a part of this abusive family with this abusive dad and stuff. It was pretty funny in this movie, and the wife's wanting to get him into, you know, the confrontation or the, you know, stuff that comes into the play when she wants to have the priest bless the house and all this stuff, and the interplay between the family and basically seeing the house slowly possess Sonny until the point where, of course, at the end of, or not the end of the movie, but the kind of the hour-minute mark or whatever, he will grab one of Dad's rifles and basically, in a much more interesting way than is portrayed at the beginning of the first movie, will basically one by one blow the family members away. And as I said when I first saw it, and when I was 14, I didn't compare, or I didn't put two and two together and realize that we're just seeing a more, you know, intricate version of the opening scene of the first movie here. We're seeing, you know, the events of the first movie happening retold in this part 2 movie, but whatever, I know that now. So for me, this movie, and probably, I imagine as a teenager, I probably didn't, well, I don't know. For me, after the 1 hour 7 minute mark, you can almost turn the movie off, because this is where the movie gets really, in my opinion, boring. And just like we're dealing with basically this priest, or this priest guy, who is now dealing with the only child left, you know, Sonny, the perpetrator of the, you know, the murders of his family members and stuff. And, you know, the rest of the movie just deals with that, and, you know, I can't even necessarily remember anything about the last half or the last part of the movie from here on out. It's just, in my opinion, very boring, and they got this kid locked up, and this is what I was talking about, of the director's potential personal interest in the, you know, whatever, the actual thing, you know, whatever is purported to be the actual steps, you know, that are taken, you know, with all this possessed people and all this bullshit. So this is just, the rest of the movie is just basically the priest guy versus Sonny, possessed Sonny. So it's kind of almost like a little bit of Exorcist, the last third of this movie, where it's just like this priest trying to save Sonny, and it's just so boring, because it just involves just these priests and these high bigwigs talking. You know, this guy wants to talk into the bigwigs in the back of the car to try to get an exorcism, and he just, pardon me, so it's very reminiscent, obviously, of The Exorcist and those kind of movies. So I guess I'm kind of saying it over and over, but basically what I'm trying to say, and have said, I guess, is that after the 1 hour 7 minute mark, it's just completely uninteresting to me, even more so now than probably was when I was a teenager. It's just like, oh my god, it's not interesting at all. So obviously what ends up happening is, towards the end of the movie, I don't know, the kid escapes, or he lets him out or something, ends up being I mean, I wouldn't even call it so much of a confrontations. This is kind of like a face-off. They end up back at the house and upstairs or something, and it's kind of like Sonny versus Priest or whatever. Not in a big way or anything that's epic by any means or whatever, but at the end of the movie, it's just like, you know, the Priest, I think, takes the bad, you know, basically exorcises the kid, you know, the bad spirits or whatever the hell it is out of the kid and into himself or whatever, and the kid is vindicated of, you know, this not all wrongdoing necessarily, but I can't even remember, but he's freed of the evil demon spirit or whatever. And then I think the priest is just at the end of the movie just seen in the corner, just sitting in the corner being like, and his, you know, he's getting the pulsating stuff under his skin of the being possessed or whatever. I think that's kind of the end of the movie. But so because of the fact that it's kind of very much a very, you know, two-part movie where the last third, in my opinion, isn't the most interesting thing in the world, I'm only going to be able to give Amityville 2, The Possession, 2 stars out of 4 stars, just because, you know, it's a relatively strong first hour, but then after that it just goes like whoosh, for me. So their presentation of, you know, I don't know if this is a new transfer that's that Shout Factory did for their Blu-ray release of Amityville 2 The Possession, but in my opinion the Blu-ray looks far superior, or the Blu-ray presentation of this movie looks far superior to the Blu-ray presentation of the first movie, unfortunately. So, you know, it's unfortunate that, like, the one I like the best gets one of the worst presentations in this, you know, this trilogy collection. But, you know, for fans of this movie, you know, be ready to be surprised or excited or be delighted at the fact that the presentation on this Blu-ray is really, 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 you know, good. It says on the back here, I don't know how a company can screw up so bad, but it says on the back, DTS Master Audio Mono. From what I can see in the Blu-ray player, I didn't watch it in this way, but I think this release also includes a 5.1 track as well. Obviously, being a mono guy, I'm more for mono, but I think, don't let the back of this fool you, I think this does actually have a 5.1 remix as well. As I said, the image quality is absolutely fantastic in this movie, and it makes me wish you could see the original movie like this. I don't know why we can't. I would imagine these special features, hold on one sec. Yeah, there's no special features on the DVD from the, you know, the collection, the Amityville Horror Collection that I can see. So I would imagine all the special features on this Blu-ray, which I'm showing you right now, are probably special features that Shout Factory put together. You got an interview with the director, it says on here. New interviews with actors, Andrew Prine, who features briefly in this movie, Diane Franklin, and so basically the girl who plays the oldest daughter in this movie, and also the woman who plays the mother, and do interviews. Probably, I think they're each like 10, somewhere around 10-minute long interviews each. They do, you know, they each a separate interview, and a commentary with author. I don't know, you can see it right there. So, author of Growing Up a Ghostly. I don't know, you can see it right there, okay? And then theatrical trailer. So, you know, the 2 interviews with the 2 women, I didn't rewatch them on with Andrew Prine, but the interviews with the 2 women are pretty good. They kind of, you know, that girl who was the older girl in this movie still looks really pretty good for, you know, the age she is or whatever. And she offers, you know, they both say some relatively interesting insight, both about, you know, having to work down in Mexico and the interiors being shot down in Mexico. And it was the same way with part 3. I imagine maybe it was that way for the first movie. I don't know, but so the Blu-ray of this particular Blu-ray is a little, you know, chock full of a little more what I would probably assume as being exclusive features compared to features that already existed. Here is the interior. You open it up, see these pictures inside. Again, I like the artwork of that disc. Just popping this off so you can see all of what's going on here with the pictures inside. So that pretty much covers it for my review of Amityville 2 The Possession and the Blu-ray from Scream Factory that is featured in the Amityville Trilogy collection put out by them. Like I say, it's a movie that I liked more as a kid than I do now. I mean, the last third of this movie is just almost unbearable. So, thank you very much for watching this review, and as always, we'll catch you next time.